You've found Wickett on Wisconsin, your one-stop podcast for all things Packers, Brewers, Bucks, and the rest of your favorite teams from all over the state of Wisconsin. We're powered by Wisconsin Sports Heroics, online at wisportsheroics.com and the Wisconsin Podcast Association. And now, here's your host, Mike Wickett.
Well, it's springtime, which means it is NFL draft time. The NFL continues to be a 365-day-a-year league, and I don't think it's ever been more apparent than 2022. And we have had drama involving the Green Bay Packers, so it is time to talk with Jacob Morley, who writes for about 7 different Packers websites, but he's here representing PackerReport.com. Jacob, thank you so much for coming on, man. Do you guys remember a time when you would cover the Packers and the offseason was actually an offseason?
No, that's not a real thing, right? I mean, going back to before last year's draft, I mean, it realistically was probably the last time. And then what was it, April 28th, 2021, all hell broke loose. Yeah, exactly. And it hasn't slowed down since. It really hasn't. And here we are.
You know, before we jump into some of the prospects and talking about needs and you know, obviously the Devontae trade blows everything up. Mm-hmm. I don't think I could ever remember a first round with more drama for Green Bay, considering the Jordan Love recent history, the decade and a half of not taking the first round pick, which I think is an overrated thing for not taking a first round weapon for Aaron Rodgers, to the Devontae stuff, to Rodgers coming back and the commitment. There are just infinite storylines just based on, you know, all the intrigue of people guessing of what they're going to do.
Yeah. I mean, what was it, 2002? They took Javon Walker in the first round as a wide receiver, who was awesome, by the way. I went deep down a Javon Walker rabbit hole like a month ago. That dude was unbelievable, you know, until everything happened with the knee and the training and all that. But yeah, I mean, it does feel like if the Packers don't take a wide receiver in the first round this year, there will be fans at 1265 Lombardi with their pitchforks and with their, you know, torches ready to burn the place to the ground. And maybe an overreaction,
maybe. You know, I again, before we get into Christian Watson and Chris Olave and all those things, we need to set this precedent that if you're listening to this maybe a week after we record it and something has happened, you know, if they make a move and they bring in, you know, there's a lot of talk about DK Metcalf or Jarvis Landry and all these things. A lot of this gets thrown out the window. So with that being said, do you think they keep 22 and 28? Do you think Green Bay right now will select 2 players in the first round?
Oh, man, I would say I am right on the fence. And I know that's a cop-out answer, okay. But I could see them doing a lot of different things. And if they get a player of the caliber of like DK Metcalf, there's no way, I don't think they're going to be able to keep on to hold on to 22 and 28. But they also have 2 second-round picks to play with, and they have like 3 fourth-round picks to play with. So like they have a ton of draft capital. And here's an interesting nugget that I was thinking about today. Tyler Lockett is a guy that has also been kind of thrown around a little bit. He might not command a first-round draft pick, and he also may not be traded until post June 1st, because for the Seahawks, it makes more sense financially for them to trade him at that point. I think they save like $6 million, roughish, if they do it after June 1st. So there is a scenario where the Packers could go through the whole draft, keep all their top picks. Everyone's mad because they didn't get the veteran receiver. And then after June 1st, they keep all those guys. Let's say they add a Chris Olave and a Christian Watson in the second round, and then post June 1st, they send a 2023 second to Seattle for a Tyler Lockett. So even if the draft comes and goes and they don't have one of these veteran wide receivers, there's a scenario where that might be better. Because if they really are all in, like, boys, we're doing it this year or next year, then keep all your top picks this year. Let them develop for the 2 or 3 years you have Rodgers, and you keep, like they're doing with the cap, kick it down the road, right? Same thing with your draft picks, kind of kick the can down the road. Think, hey, maybe we don't have our first round draft pick now next year, but hey, we think we're going to be picking at 32 next year anyways. So who cares? That would be the most all-in thing I could think of. But to answer I know I just went down a weird.
That's okay. You've gone down a Javon Walker rabbit hole. You've gone down a post June 1st trade rabbit hole.
Welcome to my mind, man. That's how this thing works. And so I think it's 50-50. I think if they give up a first round draft pick for a receiver, I think it's DK. I think he would command at least 28. Probably they'd want 22. You've heard rumors of the Jets calling on AJ Brown and Deebo Samuel. So could the Packers be in on that as well? And also that brings you, Mike, to another thing. Why are all the good teams not willing to pay wide receivers? Interesting, right?
It is something that I abide by. It is a rule. There are several rules I live by. A, never bet on Gonzaga. Correct again. Bet on Brady. Don't ever bet against Tom Brady. More times than that, you're usually going to win whatever your bet is. And don't have the highest paid wide receiver in the National Football League, because the last time a team won a Super Bowl that had the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL, it was Marvin Harrison. That was a long time ago. He was making $8 million a year. Now we've come a long way in terms of salary.
And they beat the Bears in the Super Bowl. So can we really even count it as a real Super Bowl win? I mean, come on.
It's like having the most expensive house on the block. You don't want to have the most expensive house on the block. It's better to have other pieces. I don't know, because if they do make a move for DK, and I know we're playing a lot of what ifs, but if they bring somebody in like that, there's going to have to be an extension. And I don't know what Metcalf is going to want. Does he look at Tyreek Hill's deal? Does he look at Devontae Adams' deal and say, I want to be in that conversation? Or would he take something, 4 years, $88 million, 70 guaranteed? I'm just spitballing with numbers here. But you just got rid of Devontae because you knew you couldn't pay him. I don't think they're going to, flip it back and say, all right, we're going to pay DK Metcalf $25 million, but we wouldn't pay 28.
Yeah. Well, I think they were, though. That's why this is so interesting, too, is because the Packers were willing to pay Devontae that. So what's to say they wouldn't be willing to pay DK big time money? But I'm with you, though. If I were building a team, and actually the Chiefs are kind of doing what I wanted the Packers to do in a lot of ways, because you've got your stud in Travis Kelce. He's your stud. Bring in the 3-point shooter in Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Bring in, Juju Smith-Schuster, who you think can kind of play that outside receiver and do a lot of that stuff in the intermediate game for you. Have your pieces in there, but don't pay the guy like Tyreek Hill all that money to be the one guy to do it. I would rather have two guys at 10 to 15 million a year that are both good, instead of the one guy at 30 million a year that's great.
I agree.
And we saw with Devontae, and Devontae is probably one of my favorite all-time Packers. Legitimately, everything he does is cool. He is such a fun guy to watch. He's such a fun guy to listen to. Mike McCarthy would always say, your best players should be your best people. And that is Devontae to a T. So it hurts to see him go. But with that said, we saw it when they played good teams. What good teams can do is they can take away your best player. Yeah. And if you don't have guys behind that, that's when we start to see, Rodgers get weird, and we start to see other guys maybe not getting the looks that they should get. And I am not scheme guy where it's hey, it doesn't matter. Matt LaFleur's scheme is so good. They need dudes. They need guys that can win. And when it's 3rd and 6, you knew they were going to Devontae with it. And more often than not, that's awesome. That's what you should be doing. Sometimes the most obvious call is the right call, and throwing the ball to Devontae is the most obvious call. And 9 out of 10 times you're right. But when you play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, when you play the San Francisco 49ers, what's plan B? It looks like they didn't have one.
It was throw into a double cover Devontae. It was still throw to Devontae, but when there were two defenders there.
So give me someone, let's get off the DK train, because DK is kind of that wide receiver one. My ideal scenario for the Packers is go get Devontae Parker. Go get a guy that's going to be good. Maybe not great, but good. Get him. Sign Will Fuller. Draft 2 guys with those top 4 picks. The last time the Packers won a Super Bowl is when Rodgers had weapons everywhere. And it wasn't like superstars. It was like the emergence of Jordy. Greg Jennings was a superstar at that point. But like the emergence of Jordy, James Jones was on that team. Jermichael Finley was hurt that year. But they just had Donald Driver at the end of his career. Like guys that are just good football players that are going to win their one-on-ones and have them across the board. And there are studies that you can get into like the deep analytics of football, and it is not necessarily, do you have a wide receiver 1? You got to have one. No, it's, do you have 5? Do you have 5 guys that can play?
Well,
because
I was
going to say, if you have 5 guys that can play, there aren't more than 1 or 2 teams, and the Packers are honestly one of them, that have 3 legitimate corners on their team. Like, so if your wide receiver 3 can beat depth on the other team, that's when you really start to beat these good teams. Devontae is going to get his numbers against 95% of the teams in the league. Like, and we saw that. We've seen it. But like, what is it going to take to get over the hump? It's going to be 1 through 5. Like, stock the cupboards, man.
And I would rather teams not know what Rodgers' first read is going to be. 9 times out of 10, his first read is, where's Devontae? Where's the defender on Devontae? And very rarely was it, well, where's Lazard first? Like, that wasn't really a thing. So if it keeps the other team guessing, I'm on board with you. I totally agree. It's great to have Devontae Adams, but you need to have those other guys. And, you know, Amari Rodgers wasn't that guy. Cobb wasn't that guy. MVS wasn't that guy. Didn't stay healthy. Not the most reliable guy. Although didn't have a drop last year, but he did miss a lot of the season. Let's get into, how shocked will you be if at 22 or 28, at least one wide receiver isn't selected?
Really shocked.
Okay.
I would be really shocked. I do believe they will take a receiver with one of their first 2 picks, but also this team took Jordan Love at pick 27, man. So I don't know. And the thing with that too, though, is, and I would warn Packers fans, if they go edge in a tackle, like that would be a very Packers thing to do, right? To be like, yeah, we do need a receiver, but we believe in winning in the trenches, and we're going to take those guys. And then going in round 2, they're like, beyond pick 20, historically in the NFL, there's not a big difference between like picking 20 and 70 for receivers. Like those guys, if you don't get like the top dog type guy, you can find really, really good value at receiver in the second round. We've seen it the last several years. A.J. Brown, a guy that we just brought up, was a second round draft pick, 1,000 yards his rookie year. Justin Jefferson, obviously, he was the 22nd overall pick, which the Packers have. And the guy that I think is most comparable to him in this draft, ready to roll, is everybody's favorite, Chris Olave. But that's neither here nor there. But, you know, if they don't take a guy at 22 and 28, yes, I will be shocked. But I won't be disheartened. I think they'll hit it hard on day 2. And if Goody is anything like Ted Thompson, a second round wide receiver is pretty much a lock to be a Packers Hall of Famer. Ted didn't miss. He did not miss in the second round at receiver.
No, it's people, because again, that's my low-hanging fruit favorite phrase. Well, they never took a wide receiver or a weapon for Rodgers in the first round, and even he mentioned it. And I'm like, yeah, but look what they did with Jordy Nelson and Greg Jennings and everybody else they took in that second round. I mean, Devontae Adams wasn't a first rounder and is arguably the best wide receiver in Packers history. So I think it's weak. I will say I was on the Olave train way back. I'm not going to say I was the OG Olave hype train driver, and I hate Ohio State with every fiber of my being, Jake. I can't stand Ohio State. But that guy, when I watched him the last 2 years at Ohio State, he is just always open. He's just always running around in free space before the ball even gets there. He's wide open. I know that Ryan Day runs a crazy good offensive scheme, and they always have great quarterback play at Ohio State. But that guy's always open, never drops the ball, never makes mistakes. If he adds 15 pounds, he's identical to Devontae Adams' size right now. So realistically, can the Packers get him at 22? I've seen some fan mock drafts that haven't fallen to 28. I can't see that happening. But realistically, 22 is Olave a guy they can get? And what is his projection that you see in the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, I just did this a couple of days ago. I looked at where receivers have typically gone in the draft, and it's kind of hit or miss. Like there were a few years that there was not a single receiver taken before pick 22. Like that happened 2 years in a row, like 2 years ago, and then the year before. And then there was 4 last year and 4 the year before. Basically, what I'm trying to say is the last 10 years, the average is 2.5 receivers are taken before pick 22. And most people would probably say, if you read all the consensus things and all that, people would probably say Drake London is probably going to be gone at before 22. And Olave's teammate, Garrett Wilson, the NFL loves that dude. I don't really get that, but that's fine because I'd rather have Olave. So Olave is the third guy. So like you're 50-50 on if he's going to be there at 22, and maybe Burks goes, maybe, Jameson Williams from Alabama goes, pick your flavor. But if I am Goody, I am thinking, have I learned from the sins of my sins of the past? I didn't go up and get Justin Jefferson, and I wish I would have. I wish I just would have, whatever it took. I wish I just would have gone up, because everything we know, even immediately after that draft, even with all the Jordan Love stuff, was, well, they really wanted to go get Justin Jefferson, and he was, he got snatched up. Last year, I had heard people talk about Rashad Bateman in the same vein. Like they wanted Bateman bad, and they didn't get him. Like I, as far as, and I think it's okay to say this, I even had someone tell me there was within that building the thought that we are not leaving the first round without Rashad Bateman, and they did. Luckily, they left with Eric Stokes, who probably was a better rookie anyways. But that's how it works sometimes. But that's all to say, the Packers will not be outbid this year. They have the firepower. If they want to move up to get Chris Olave, then damn it, they'll do it. They can go do it. But will they? Like that is what I think is going to be so interesting is, they don't take first round receivers. Daniel Jeremiah, who is super well connected with the Packers, one of the only people when he talks about the Packers and how they do things, like he's one of the only guys I actually will listen to, because he actually knows what goes on in that building. And I think some of that is Bucky, that he's good buddies with, work with the Packers, all that stuff. But a couple years ago, he said, like, they just don't take receivers in the first round. It's just something they don't do. And does that change with 2 first-round draft picks? I don't know. So like that's interesting. But with Olave, like his projection as a rookie, he's an easy projection. I think day one he steps onto an NFL field, he is a top 15 wide receiver in the NFL.
In the league.
Because in the league, yeah.
In the NFL, you have him as a top 15 with Devontae and Cooper Kupp just a couple of notches ahead of him.
Yeah, especially with Rodgers throwing him the ball. Because I think that's where I think they're going to develop a chemistry quick, because you look at how he wins. He's so intelligent. Like he's like, I mean, if you're into poetry, that's like that's what it's like watching him run his routes. Like he's a poet. He's an artist with the way he gets into his route stems, his release package at the line of scrimmage is NFL ready. Like you could not press him. All this stuff about the Smith Njigba, the guy that is going to be a top 15 pick next year from Ohio State. He's awesome. Garrett Wilson's going to go above Olave this year. And that is all to say, watch Ohio State's all 22, and you tell me who they're rolling their coverages towards. Number 2, people were scared of Chris Olave. Chris Olave was the reason that Garrett Wilson and Smith Njigba were able to be so successful, because teams were scared of him, and teams did not let him beat them. And he had great coaching at LSU. He went back. He could have been a first-round draft pick last year, but he came back and he got better. Like he legitimately got better between his junior and senior year, or whatever that was, the COVID year in there, whatever that weird stuff is. But he is everything. I mean, he is, when you look at like what the Packers like, he legitimately checks almost every single box. He's like 5 pounds a little bit below their threshold. And Goody has come out and said, this is where I'll push back on that too, because Goody has come out and said, hey, we follow the Ron Wolf model for drafting wide receivers. And people think that means you need to be 6'4", 210 pounds, run a 4.3, because basically that's The only 3 picks Goody has taken at wide receiver have basically been that, but he's only taken 3 day 3 guys. So I don't think it's that, that tight. And you look at Ron Wolf, Robert Brooks was 6 foot, 177 pounds when he came out of South Carolina as a rookie. That's a Ron Wolf guy. That's who he took. And their games are actually kind of similar. They're both route runners who are surprisingly good athletes, who are surprisingly good after the catch, but they're just open. And I think within Matt LaFleur's scheme, a lot of it is not dependent on the wide receiver winning one-on-one matchups. They do a lot of crossers. They do a lot of rub routes. They do a lot of stuff like that. It's more about like, do you understand spacing and do you understand like what the route concept in itself is trying to achieve? And like, for example, so like if you have 3 wide receivers on, trips right, and I'm running a corner, and I know like if you're a smart receiver, you're going to understand like, hey, I'm running this corner because I understand that I'm clearing out the corner and the safety for, the underneath, hook, curl, whatever it is. So like, I think Olave is that type of receiver that's like, hey, I know what my job is within a specific offense, and I know how to do it. With Devontae, he knew his job was to catch every ball that came in his vicinity, and he was going to get a lot of them. So like, there are ways that I think this offense can get better. And I know that's like a sin to say. How could an offense get better by losing the best wide receiver in the NFL? It can. It can. You not right now. Luckily, they don't play a game tomorrow, right, Nick or Mike? Because if they did, yeah, I'd be with you. I would be with everybody that's like, they're screwed, because they would be screwed, but they don't play tomorrow. And I believe, and everything that they've said at the owners meeting as well, all that stuff. What did Goody say? What did LaFleur say? We got to add guys.
Yeah.
I don't think they're just not going to add guys.
Social media tells me what a terrible job Gutekunst and company have done with this receiver corps. It's like, yeah, they know where they're at. I know that you post on message boards and you play in fantasy football leagues, but trust me, Brian Gutekunst knows what his wide receiving corps looks like better than Steve in Green Bay knows, or Joe in West Dallas. It blows my mind sometimes when fans don't think that the guy's job, whose job it is to build an NFL roster, doesn't look at his NFL roster and be like, man, what are we going to do now? We just traded Devontae. Yeah. I guess we're going to go with Lazard. He's our wide receiver 1. That's just not a thing.
Hope that works out. Yeah.
I saw one very interesting mock draft that had Tyler Linderbaum, the center from Iowa, falling to 28. And again, I don't know about mock drafts. I think a lot of them are just, how can I get clicks? But if they went with an interior lineman and came away with a wide receiver in that first round, I'd call that a win on day 1.
Yeah. That all depends on who the pick at 22 was, right? If they get everybody's fan favorite in Olave at 22, I don't think it matters who they pick at 28. I really don't. There'll be people that woo for like, we did it. But that would be interesting though, because you look at sorry, my dog is going nuts.
That's okay.
He wants to get on the show. I think if they went a receiver at 22, and then like, let's say they go with like a Linderbaum, I think the easiest way to make an argument for them being like, that's why we are doing that, is Aaron Rodgers, kept clean, is the best quarterback on the planet. Aaron Rodgers under pressure is bad. Like and it's not just like, it's been like the last few years. Like, he has not been as good under pressure. Some of that has been he hasn't been under pressure much because his offensive line has been very good, but he is an absolute assassin when he's kept clean. And I could see them being like, hey, that's us playing our best football, is when 12 is clean, and we're going to keep pouring resources into that. Linderbaum is an awesome football player. Packers fans would love him. I mean, he would be a fan favorite almost immediately. The question would be, can Josh Myers play guard? Which I think he can, because he's listed as a center guard right now. But that would be the big question. But that would immediately add depth to the interior offensive line. Because now you have a guy in Myers that you're comfortable playing at. I'm sure he probably play right guard. JRJ at left guard, Linderbaum at center. That pretty much tells you, yeah, Elton Jenkins is playing right tackle, and that's a really good offensive line. If at least that's a lot of resources invested in offensive line.
Day round number 2, day 2, what is, and assuming they go for need, because we know the teams don't always draft for need. The Packers are a team that doesn't always draft for need. But if they get a receiver in round 1 and they say, pie in the sky, they take an interior lineman in round 1 as well, what's the next need on this team that needs to get addressed through the draft?
I think safety is a sneaky high need for this team, because Savage and Amos are both free agents after this year. They don't have anyone behind them. I wouldn't be surprised if they move on from one of those guys next year. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they took someone like a Lewis Seen at 28, which I think would be awesome because I love him. But wouldn't be surprised at all, especially since they play so many 3 safety looks anyways. So I think that is a sneaky need. I think edge is a sneaky need. I think they love playing edge in waves. I think ultimately, Whitney Merciless will be brought back. I think that's more just kind of a wait and see on the injury. But if your first wave is Preston and Rashawn, second wave is Merciless and a top 50 edge, I think that's where they want to be. Other than that, man, I think maybe tackle.
Or just go back to wide receiver. Just come back to wide out again.
I mean, honestly, yeah, maybe, because that might be that big of a need that it is. They look at it and say, okay, we added Olave, we added Burks, we added whoever. Oh, okay, we still want another one, because we need another guy to do something, or a tight end. Tight end is a sneaky. All these needs outside of wide receiver are sneaky needs because Goody and company have done such a good job with this roster. They really don't have. I mean, I know Packers fans would push back on this, but we are spoiled. There are teams out there with needs at multiple positions like the Packers have at wide receiver, and they're still going to leave the draft thinking, well, what are we going to do at corner? What are we going to do there? So the Packers are in a good spot to kind of like focus all their attention at one specific area of need. And one thing we know about Goody, he attacks needs. 2-3 years ago, they had a need at edge. He signed 2 of them and drafted one in the top 15. Last year I don't know. Honestly, it's weird because after Goody's first year, I feel like they've been a pretty deep team. Like he loaded this roster pretty
especially
quickly.
On the defensive side. They just have depth at all 3 levels. And maybe the safety spot is one where it's not quite as deep, but with all the the bringing in Rasul Douglas was just a lightning in a bottle stroke of genius that nobody else saw. But I'm just looking at more of these guys that are on these boards that people are talking about. I want to fire one at you before I let you go because you've already let me have more time than we agreed on.
All good.
Christian Watson. Now, he is a guy that didn't play North Dakota State, didn't play great competition, looked good, but does he translate to the NFL, and where does he fall on that second day? Is he a second-round guy, a third-round guy? Is somebody going to reach up and get him? What do we know about this kid?
So I don't know if you know this, Mike, but I'm originally from the Fargo-Moorhead area, so I'm
perfect. This is perfect.
Big NDSU guy. I actually do photography for the football team with my buddy Ross Uglum, who writes at Bison Report. So I've seen Watson up close for the last several years. Him coming in as a 170-pound soaking wet, string bean who was a freak athlete, and now he's a 210-pound freak athlete who still looks like a string bean, but is incredibly strong, gets after it in the weight room. And you kind of saw what he did at the NFL Combine and what type of athlete he is. I mean, he is a 1A type athlete in the NFL, not just for a Division 2, 3, 4, whatever type player, anywhere. He is a freak athlete. I will say, I was pleasantly surprised watching him at the Senior Bowl with the type of nuance he was running his routes with. Because at North Dakota State, and you do have to understand, NDSU is an FCS school that's won 9 of the last 11 FCS championships. All they do is win championships. They don't throw the ball. Like, they throw the ball 200 times a year. They run. They play defense, and then they give the ball to their athletes. Occasionally, Christian Watson was one of their athletes. And, there are people talking about, I wish he would have looked better. I wish he would have been more dominant at that level. And I think you just don't understand how they play, and he was dominant. Like, I mean, this guy was averaged over 20 yards a catch. He was a threat to score every time he scored the ball. He looked like an absolute freak athlete on the field when he played there. So you ask them, like, okay, so how does that translate to the NFL? And he's raw. Like, there's no way around, no question about it. He's not in the same vein as like an Olave or even like a John Mechie, who I think is ready to play in the NFL.
Oh, I
too.
love that kid. If they came away with Olave and Mechie in those first 2 rounds, man, I would just be like
two of the
popping
best,
bottles, man. I love
two of the
those
best,
two.
Two of the best route runners in this year's draft class, I think. But Watson, like, he just isn't that guy. Watson is the guy that you hope you would get to pair with an Olave and say, okay, Christian Watson, we're going to let you return kicks. We're going to let you basically be MVS your rookie year, because you have the type of raw speed and strength to kind of run through contact and still be able to be a deep threat. But also, we're going to use you in a lot of the same ways that San Francisco uses Deebo Samuel. I don't think people realize how often he took handoffs at North Dakota State and how creative he is with the ball in his hand.
Oh, it sounds like a Matt LaFleur dream right there, a guy you can use all around the field.
And you talk about like guys that do fit, these thresholds that we pretend to attack like we know what they are. But if those thresholds are even remotely close, Christian Watson is all of them. The only thing he might be a little bit in the gray area on is he's going to be a 23-year-old rookie. And they typically have shied away of those types in the first round. Second round, I think all that stuff's off. I mean, Elton Jenkins was like a 23, 24-year-old rookie, and he's been awesome. So now where does he go? I don't know, man. I think I said today, like, I think his range is honestly like between 25 and 50. Like, I would not be shocked if the Packers doubled up at receiver in the first round, took Olave at 22 and Christian Watson at 28. I would say I'm thrilled about that. I would also say they probably just thought Watson wouldn't be there in the second round. And they said, hey, if we would be willing to take him at 45, then we should be willing to take him at 28. Because that is kind of how the draft goes. Like, in the draft guide that we do every year, like, we have like 16 first round grades. And people always ask, like, well, what do you mean? There's 32 first round picks. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So like there's 16 guys. You stack these guys against everybody and you give them grades and you say 16 guys are first round grades. Everyone else, and you might have 50 guys that have second round grades. And so if you think a guy is worth a pick at 50, or if you want to take him at 63 and you really hope he gets there and he's still at the top of your board, then you take him, stacked against the other second round guys. So I would not be shocked if Watson ends up in the first round, just because he's got everything. Like, and teams love size and speed. And I think they're going to fall in love with who he is as a prospect and a person. I mean, this is also a kid. You want to talk about a Packers profile type wide receiver, watch him block. He played in an offense. They ran the ball 600 times. He's not on the field if he's not putting people's face masks in the dirt. And he does, and he absolutely does. He gets after it in the run game, takes that stuff personally. So, I think he'd be, that is a little bit homerism of me. And I almost feel kind of bad because I know there are a couple of us that, so Ross Uglum and I are both big NDSU guys, but we also both cover the draft, and we've both loved Christian Watson for a long, long time. And my fear is, with everything that he's been able to do, is he going to get overdrafted? I would love it if the Packers took him and Olave, because then he's still kind of the second guy and he's still kind of the raw guy that you're like, okay, this guy's going to take a little bit longer, but could be a legitimate first, wide receiver one in the NFL. Might take 2 or 3 years. My fear is a team takes him in the first round and it's like, dude, we need you this year. I don't know how that would work out for him, but I do believe in him, and I love him. And I think, 25 to 50, anywhere in that range, I think he's coming off the board.
Of course you're from Fargo. Of course. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you be from the school or from the state of where this, kind of a wild card prospect hails from that, could wind up being as good as Justin Jefferson, or could wind up
what's crazier about that is Ross Uglum and I didn't even know each other before Twitter, and just like randomly found out, like, hey, You write for Packer Report. You love the draft. You love the Packers. Where are you from? Oh, dude, we played against each other in high school football. It's a small world, man.
That is wild. How can people get your draft guide? Because I know that it has taken off. It's great information. I mean, you and I have been talking for about a half hour here. I feel like we could do 4 more hours. Where can people pick your brain and get the draft guide?
So the easiest way to do it is go to my Twitter profile at Jacob Morley, and it is the pinned link. It's I can't rattle off the link for you now, but it's like a Gumroad thing. But click that. Game On Wisconsin. They promote it too. Packer Report promotes it. Like a lot of people it'll be around tweeting, retweeting it, all that stuff. But yeah, it has been awesome. It has been so much fun to just be part of the conversation, and so the support that we've gotten from that draft guide has been overwhelming, honestly. So it's been awesome.
Well, you can find it in the article around this podcast at wisportsheroics.com as well. I'll tweet it out for sure, man, because I love the draft. I don't have it with 3 kids. I don't have so much time to get into the weeds like you guys do anymore, but I love those 3 days and just talking about it. I mean, hell, like I said right in the onset, the NFL is a 365-day-a-year league, and this is usually the nerdiest time of year is talking about draft prospects, but I love it, and I thank you so much for coming on, man. Continued success. And when the Packers do move a second-round pick and Jordan Love for DK Metcalf, we're going to have you back on so we can then regroup and start all over again.
Let's do it. I'm ready.
Jake, thanks so much, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
There he is, Jacob Morley from about 7 different sites, but PackerReport.com. If you want to check out his draft preview, follow me on Twitter. It's in the story over at wisportsheroics.com. Thanks for checking out the podcast this week. As always, go Pack Go, go Bucks, and go Brewers.